Hi, welcome everybody. It's Mike Newton down here at Lytham Golf Academy. In this video here, we're going to talk a little bit about hitting the right yardages, or maybe how we can hit a yardage in between a club. So what I mean by that is, obviously, if we have a yardage, say, for argument's sake, 140 yards with your 9-iron, pitch wedge goes at, say, 125, for example, then what happens if you get that yardage around the 133 mark? So basically right in between those two yardages, what do we do? Do we hit the pitch wedge harder? Do we try and hit the 9-iron softer? And that's what we're going to talk about in this video here. We're going to do a little bit of testing between my pitch and wedge and 9-iron, trying to hit that middle yardage, and let's see how we can actually go about achieving that yardage. So just before we jump into the video, if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. Hit the logo in the bottom right hand screen, MNG, hit the bell icon, get notifications any future videos landing on the channel. Loads more content coming your way through club reviews, club testing, and also swing tips. Okay, so I'm going to hit my 9-iron first, and I've got obviously GC2 HMT set up here. Just going to hit my normal stop sort of 9-iron swing really, see what sort of numbers these go, maybe hit sort of 4 or 5 shots. I won't show you every single shot of there. Then I'm going to hit 4 or 5 shots with my pitch and wedge. Again, normal full swing. We'll have a look at the yardages there and see what my averages is between the 9-iron and the pitch wedge. And let's see, well, how do I then go about hitting that middle yardage? So hopefully, many of you will hopefully have gone through like a gapping session with your irons in terms of getting yardages. So if you're using a GPS or a laser out on the golf course, then you should really be knowing how far each of your irons go in terms of a carry distance and maybe a potential rollout. Obviously, rollout depends very much on the ground conditions, the time of the year, etc. But you should be sort of knowing those numbers, and if you're using that measuring device. But if you zap that yardage that's right in between those numbers that you might have on your side of your bag there, then how do we go about sort of hitting that number, which we're going to talk about in a bit. So first of all, I'm going to hit a 9-iron, just normal full swings with a 9-iron, and then we'll hit a batch with these. Okay, so that's a nice opening sort of strike there. So that one's carrying out, yeah, about 139. So I'll probably put a number around that 140 mark for my sort of 9-iron. So that's a typical sort of number that I would hit. Okay, so there's a nice one to sort of finish on here. So what was that last one there? Yeah, 139. So I'm sort of fluctuating between sort of 136, 139. We'll have a look at those numbers in a little bit more detail. Going to switch into pitch and wedge here. Let's see what number that hits, and then we'll talk a little bit about how I hit that middle sort of yardage. Right, so pitch and wedge in my hands here, and I would expect this to go somewhere around 125, maybe 128 sort of mark. Let's give this first one a hit. So just normal full wedge swing for me. Not going to try and do anything sort of different here, just a normal sort of speed swing, etc. That was 129 there. Okay, right, that's it, pretty good. So there's 5 shots hit with the pitch and wedge, and they're all in that sort of 127, 128 area. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at those numbers, just make sure exactly what those are. Let's establish what that middle yardage is between those two clubs, and then we'll talk about how we can hit that number. Right, okay, so let's have a little look at those numbers. So we'll look at a carry number. We're going to look at it as an average, because obviously we're not always going to carry it exactly the same, but 138 with the 9-iron there, and you can see 127 with the pitching wedge. So 11 yards difference there. So to be hitting the middle of those numbers, we're going to be looking somewhere around 132, 133. So let's talk a little bit about how we can actually sort of hit that number. So to hit that middle number there between those two yardages, we've got a number of options we can do here. Obviously we can go really hard with pitching wedge, okay, which then we can maybe suffer with tempo, timing, strike, maybe a little bit of direction also. So sometimes can be a little bit unreliable there. Or other option is maybe we hit this 9-iron, just hit it softer, maybe go a little bit more sort of 3/4 in the length, just to take a few yards off it, which again, it's fine if you can control that, but again, it's getting that commitment through impact. Sometimes what we find is when we do that and ease off it, we just sort of de-accelerate, and again, strike suffers, maybe fat shots there, we just decel too much and we just don't hit that number as well. Another option is maybe you could try and hit a little cut. So maybe sort of try and work the club a little bit across the golf ball there, try and sort of fade it a little bit, which we know that flight will just take some yards off. Again, maybe a higher skill level to possibly do that also. If you feel comfortable doing that, absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. Maybe what I'm going to suggest here is literally try and keep this as simple as I can. We're going to go with a 9-iron, okay? So we're going to leave the pitching wedge because I don't want to go really hard with that pitching wedge. We're going to take the 9-iron and I'm literally just going to choke down the grip. Just slide my hands down that handle, just a fraction, maybe a sort of inch or so, maybe 1.5 inches, and just play my normal speed swing. Okay, just making that club a little bit shorter, just going down that grip, should just take off those few extra yards that I need to get it around that sort of 132, 133. Okay, so I'm not going to do anything drastically different here to the swing, well, if anything at all. I'm just literally going to slam my hands a little bit further down that handle and just put the same sort of swing on as what I did before. Okay, that's a nice strike there. Feel like I gained a little bit more control on that. Okay, what did that one carry out there? Yeah, 136, so a little bit less than what I did before, but not quite my 132, 133 mark, but you can see how it's just starting to drop a little bit of yardage off here. I'm going to hit a batch of shots. It's all about averages. I know we've got to get this strike exactly the same here, but so I'm going to hit a batch of shots and then we'll come back and look at some numbers. Okay, so there is 5 shots hit. That carried 131, a little bit up the right, 130, a little bit up that right hand side there. Not the best of accuracy there from me, but so there's 5 shots hit. Let's have a look at those numbers a little bit more detail. That looks to be doing a perfect job there in terms of that carrying that right sort of carry number in between those two distances from my full 9-iron to my full pitching wedge. Let's have a look at some numbers a little bit more detail. Okay, so just have a quick look at the dispersion rings first. So the white one was the full 9-iron, red one was the full pitching wedge. Okay, so we can see a little bit of a crossover there, but I'm wanting to sort of hit this sort of middle of the sort of centre of that to the centre of that, and there I did with that choke down 9-iron. Now, albeit I've pushed a few of those a little bit more to the right there than the other two, which again is a little bit more me than the actual club, but as in terms of a distance number, it's filling that gap quite nicely. So let's look at that a little bit more detail in terms of the actual carry number. So we saw the 138 with the full 9-iron, the 127 with the full pitching wedge, and you can see there we go, 131 there as average with the choke down 9-iron. So again, just filling in between those gaps really, really nicely. Okay, so there's a few ways of how to hit the middle gap. Now, obviously, as I said earlier, it's important that, first of all, you know your numbers of a full 9-iron, a full wedge or full anything in your golf bag really. So if you're using a GPS or a laser and you haven't been properly gapped, maybe with a launch monitor here to measure those averages of your carry, because we know those carry distance are never going to be exactly the same. If they were, we would be on tour. So these numbers are going to be always slightly different. So this is where you've got to try and get an average as best you can from some, 4 or 5 good strikes there. You can get an average between each club in your bag, and that's the sort of service I think many PGA professionals would sort of offer through with a launch monitor. So if you know those distances, that's crucial to start with. And then if you have that chart on your bag and you know that 9-iron's gone 138 for me, 127 with pitch wedge, right, what happens if I get that number in between? Am I trying to cut one up? Am I trying to just ease off of one? Am I trying to hit a wedge really hard? But for me there, just gripping down that 9-iron hits that number quite nicely there, albeit I did just push a few of those to the right, but again, that's more me than the club or what I've sort of done myself. So let me know your thoughts on that, about hitting this sort of middle number. It's a little bit of skill, maybe a little bit of practice to do that, but something worth doing, especially in your shorter irons. Tougher to do, you imagine, between your sort of 4-iron and your 5-iron, trying to hit that middle number, because they're tougher clubs to hit. But definitely in your wedges, into your 9-iron, maybe even 8, possibly into 7, you could definitely try and give that a go and try and get a little bit more accurate on that carry number. But obviously you need to know that carry number with GPS or rangefinder. Okay guys, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've had any comments from this video, fire them down below. Let me know your thoughts. Is that something, have you been gapped? That's an interesting one I would like to know. How many of you have actually been gapped out there? And if so, are you hitting these middle numbers, or are you trying to hit a wedge really hard, or vice versa, just trying to hit 3/4? Love to know your thoughts. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Very much appreciated. It keeps me getting more content out for you and try and help you guys as much as possible. And hopefully we'll catch up with you all very soon.